Take a breath. Breathe in, and then begin to relax your body. As we start the lesson, take a breath, slow down, slow your breath, and as we say, welcome. Breath in, relax your body as you exhale. Once again, another breath, and welcome. And we say it all the time, if you are here, you belong. Breath in, and welcome. And carriers of the inner light, every one of us, carriers of divine spirit, welcome. Another breath. And relax. And also, before we begin, let me tell you the first of our 3 discussion questions afterwards so you can be thinking ahead. If you were going to do a 1-point recap, I'll say several things, but if you only had 1 point to recap today's lesson, what would your top point be? So you can be thinking, you might want to write something down because I will be asking you afterwards. It's such a subjective question because everybody hears something different, so I wanted to give you a little bit of time to think. 1-point recap, what goes on your list. All right, let's begin. So early in our marriage, Denise and I went to a religious seminar. It was about inner freedom. It was about spiritual breakthrough, and there'd been a lot of buzz about this seminar, so we were both curious and hopeful. But we got there, and it was definitely not for us. The premise was this, that our stuck points, maybe our emotional blocks, maybe our faulty beliefs, hurts that we might be carrying, those things exist in us in psycho and emotional ways and in spiritual ways, but also in physical ways. That there is a stronger link than we know between the mental and the emotional and the spiritual and the physical. So that was the premise. And the practice was this. After half a day of teaching or so, several people would gather around a person who wanted some kind of a breakthrough in their life, and they would put their hands on this person and they would pray out loud, kind of very loud, for that person to be released, to have some kind of a breakthrough. And while it wasn't necessary, it was suggested that it might be helpful if the person would vomit up in a very physical way their inner blockage. So there was always a trash can nearby just in case. Now, many people had something profound happen in those prayer circles, and I am smarter than I used to be. So now I would never want to disparage those circles. But then, back then, both Denise and I felt a little bit embarrassed being in that room. Then, both Denise and I, if we were honest with ourselves, we felt a little bit scornful, a little bit arrogant, and a little bit prideful because we thought we were better than that. Now, fast forward a year after that seminar, a year in which both of us told plenty of jokes, disparaging jokes, scornful jokes, jokes that made us feel clever and superior, jokes that defined us apart from those other people. But now, a year on, there's a problem. The problem is Denise does want to have a breakthrough. She wants it desperately because it's also been a year in which she has been round and round and round and was coming full-faced to how strong a hold anxiety had in her body and in her mind, in her emotions. And it had been a year of seeing that up close, how much anxiety dictated her everyday life, and she was sick of it, and she was desperate to be free of it. She was longing for a breakthrough. So she's out driving one day, we lived in LA at the time, when that struggle for that year kind of came to a head. And right there in the car, she prayed a prayer. It was a crossing the threshold prayer. The prayer was something like, I don't care what it takes. I want to be free. Whatever it takes, I want to be free. I will even go puke in a trash can. The very thing that I think I'm too good for, I'll do it. The thing that embarrasses me, I will do it. The thing that would undercut my superiority feelings, I will do it. Whatever it takes, I want to be free. Now, I used the term crossing the threshold for that prayer because that's the next stage on the hero's journey, the one that we're going to talk about today. The first part of the journey, you'll remember, leaving home, we saw it comes with all kinds of resistance. We refuse the call. We don't hear the call. We don't hear the invitation. It's too much. It's too big. It's not coming the right way. We don't think that that could possibly be an invitation. There is resistance. And then, who knows why, but the day comes when we were unwilling, and now we're willing. Maybe it's a crisis moment, maybe it's pain, maybe it's a deep hunger, maybe it's a clarifying insight or a whiff of that deep, deep desire in our hearts, maybe the words of a mentor or the words of a friend, but the next thing that we know, we are driving down Nordhoff Avenue and we pray a prayer that crosses the threshold. We're ready. I will do whatever it takes. I will go wherever this takes me. We commit ourselves to the journey, damn the costs. Eyes wide open to leaving the world that we have known, damn the costs. We know the danger and we know that there is darkness ahead, damn the costs. I'm going to sign up. I'm going to go puke in a trash can. I want to be free. Now, I've had a front row seat watching Denise's journey out of anxiety. She never did go puke in a trash can, and it did not get better the day after she prayed that prayer. It has been a long and arduous journey. There have been dragons, and there have been trolls, and there have been sleepless nights, and there has been physical pain, there have been setbacks, and there have been disappointments. But she is no longer controlled by anxiety. And that day on Nordhoff Avenue, she went all in. That was the day she crossed the threshold. That was the day that got her where she is today. Watch Sam and Frodo.
If I take one more step, it'll be the farthest away from home I've ever been. Come on, Sam. Remember what Bilbo used to say? It's a dangerous business, Frodo, going out your door.
Crossing the threshold just sounds inspiring, doesn't it? You see that clip and you hear the soaring music, and actually the music in that clip is very appropriate because it is a soaring moment. It's appropriate that it happens on a sunny day with amber waves of grain. It's appropriate that there are boon companions bolstering one another's courage with hope and promise, crossing the threshold. That's what that day is often like, a very encouraging, hope-filled day. But, Sam, take just a few more steps down that journey and see how that goes for you. When we cross the threshold, we are never completely prepared for what's going to happen next. When we cross the threshold, if we knew how hard it was going to be, if we knew how much pain it would cost us, we would likely not go. It is always more difficult. It always takes longer. It is always tougher than we imagine it's going to be because there are always trials. There are always challenges. There are always tests and opposition and resistance. Ah, man, it was hard enough just leaving home. Couldn't this part of the journey just be easy? But dragons and trolls, ring wraiths and troubles, sleepless nights, anxiety attacks, family conflict. But these trials, they're not just random episodes of suffering. They can be, but they needn't be. They can actually be an integral part of this developmental journey. In one of our ancient texts, James says, "Consider it joy when you run into these trials, because what they're doing is changing you. They're stripping away the village limits. They're exposing the deeper you, that heroic self that is hidden deep within." So joy, he says, consider it joy. Because we're doing something when we cross that threshold. We're doing something when we immediately run into those trials. We're doing something. We're answering deep, important questions, primarily for ourselves. Do I have what it takes to be in this bigger world? Do I have what it takes? Is there something inside of me that will allow me to make it out here? Can I rise to the challenges? Can I dwell in this new reality? What the trials do is get us ready to be in that world that is bigger than we had known. It's not just a financial crisis. It is that, but it's not just that. It's not just a health crisis, not just marriage trouble or family trouble. It's not just career pressure. It's not just unfair treatment or boredom or emptiness or confusion. It's a trial. And what a trial does is present to us a test that can prepare us for a reality greater than we imagined. But we can't live in that reality until we become the kind of people who can live in that reality. So we cross the threshold, and then we immediately face one challenge after another. Mulan takes her father's sword. She joins the resistance. You can hear the soaring music as she does it. But then she gets the stuffing kicked out of her. She gets excluded. She has physical challenge. She is dismissed and her skills are dismissed. And she is disrespected by others, which all seems bad, except in those challenges, she finds something deep inside herself, something she didn't know was there. She climbs the pole and she grabs the arrow. I did not know that was in me. David and his sheep are attacked by a mountain lion, and then again by a bear, and he's changed. I did not know that I could protect my sheep at distance, an early form of artillery. I did not know I could do that, but I can. So it really doesn't matter, Goliath, that you're bigger and you're stronger, because I have already learned that I can protect myself from you from far away. These trials, they do something. They give us tools, and they give us insights, and they give us skills, and they give us capacities, things that we are going to need if we are going to inhabit this reality that is bigger than we imagined. So, on this journey, we go all in. Whatever it takes, I'll do it. Wherever it leads, I will go. And sure enough, the journey accommodates us. Leave the Shire, and sure enough, the ring will try and kill you. Leave home, and disappointment. Leave home and setbacks and embarrassment and failures and fear and that other voice that we hear that comes from within. Maybe I'm not up to this heroic journey. Maybe I don't have what it takes. All of that comes the day we decide we're going to leave home. When the trials come, we often don't see that that's what they are, trials. Mostly we just hate what's going on. Mostly, we just think something's wrong with us or something's wrong with the world. Usually, we believe that crossing the threshold, if we ever had one of those inspiring moments, was a mistake. We think that we did something wrong. It was a pipe dream. We don't realize that the trials are the journey. This is how we enter into the reality that we did not know. Now, if some fine preacher were to tap into the wisdom of myth and fable and give us a roadmap, if somebody told us that we should be expecting these trials, well, then what we might do when they hit is we might lean into our discomfort. What we might do when they hit is be a little bit suspicious of our fear, of our self-doubts, of that feeling we get when we fail. If we had a roadmap, if we knew what was coming, we might go on high alert when the ordeal now comes upon us, and we might be wondering if this is, rather than just random suffering, maybe us being stripped down of our village life. Maybe this is our mettle being tested. If we had a roadmap, we might see that these troubles might be the very moment when the village norms are being excised from our souls. And if we did wonder that, we might feel less crushed. When this failed temptation happens for the umpteenth time, we might have a different story than "I am just a failure." When the mental or emotional tool that we have depended on for so much of our life stops working for us, we might be suspicious that this is not a bad thing. When we face the depression, when we face the shame, we might, even as our failure and our fear is swirling around us, we might have some small sliver of hope saying, I wonder if. I wonder if in the midst of this experience, I am being pulled by that inexorable gravitational pull toward that greater reality. I wonder if this is me having my village illusions stripped away. I wonder, rather than my greatest failure, maybe this is cementing my entrance into this unknown world, this reality that I can't yet see. I wonder. If only we had a roadmap. So, thank you, preacher man. Thank you, ancient myths. Thank you, ancient fables. Thank you, religious tradition, chock full of stories. Thank you, Greeks. Thank you, Romans. Thank you, Mulan. Thank you, Frodo. Thank you for the roadmap. Because the roadmap tells us that's exactly what's going on. That's why we consider it joy, because there's a bigger reality right around the corner if we're looking. If we allow them, our trials can grant us access to deep interior resource we did not know we have. If we allow them, our trials can help us rise above what the village drummed into us from our birth that we should be ignoring. That deep interior power, that deep interior voice. So the tests, and by the way, tests we often fail. Tests that when we come up against them overwhelm us with fear. Tests strip away limiting beliefs and norms. Some are tests of integrity. Think about Joseph and Potiphar's wife. Some are tests of authority. Joshua yielding to Moses and learning to wield his own authority. Tests of isolation, because we do feel alone when we leave the village and we've not yet found our band of brothers. Without a roadmap, it's very easy to not see that tests are in fact tests. It's very easy to miss what's going on and just see this as a bunch of random suffering going on in our lives. But when we see them for what they are, when we let them do what they will do, our lives can deepen. Our journeys will eventually become less reactionary because we become more active directors of our journeys. The tests reveal that we do belong in this new reality. We do have what we need to make it out here in this new reality. So we do begin to drive our own stories by accessing that interior hope, by accessing that interior wisdom, by accessing that interior strength, that interior capacity, by developing the skills and the understanding that we will need. Our orientation shifts from some voice outside of ourselves telling us how we should be and what we ought to do to the interior voice that speaks of the greatest interior truth. Our orientation shifts from outside of us in those dark, dark times because we find the inner voice. We find the inner light that we had not known. We find the voice that we had not known so that we can live in this reality that we had not known. There is strength and resource within us. And that capacitates us to live in the deeper reality, the reality we had not known. And one of the most important things we find when we cross the threshold, we find our people. It turns out that we are never the only ones leaving the village. Boy, it sure feels like that when we do. But we are never the only ones who are leaving the village. There are others on the journey. That is something we did not know when we started on this journey. But all the stories tell us to look for it. Walk down this road, and eventually we will find our scarecrow and our tin man and our lion. We will find our fellowship of the ring. We will find our friends for the fray. The hero's journey starts in isolation. It does. It isolates us when we leave the village because it feels like we have left everything that we ever belonged to. And it also feels like it's always going to be that way. We go to the wilderness alone. We go into exile alone. We go to the desert alone. We do, and that's part of it. But a central theme of all these stories, that all the people who have taken on this journey and walked it, we find our people. Frodo finds Sam, Moses finds Aaron, Jacob finds Rachel, Jason finds the Argonauts. Now, I'll tell you this, one of the main reasons I started Common Thread, NRCC, back then when I started it, was that I spent way too long not finding my people when I crossed the threshold. My church didn't know what to do with my questions. My church didn't know what to do with my doubts and with my restlessness. They didn't know what I was talking about when I wanted more than what I was experiencing in church life. All they knew was to tell me to try harder at the things that we knew to do. What they didn't know is that I had been already trying as hard as I could. I didn't know how I could muster any more hard in my trying. I'd already been doing everything I knew I could, and so that their words only isolated me further. When I started Common Thread, in the back of my mind was this kind of community where we could leave home, where we could cross the threshold. And yes, we could feel isolated, but very quickly we could find our people. We could very quickly move from isolation to allies, that we could very quickly find friends with whom we could walk this journey together, and we can do that here. You can hear the call to the journey. Remember, it's extended to every one of us. You can do that here. You can get past the resistance and the refusal. In fact, we can help each other do that. We can help each other get past the resistance. You can cross the threshold, and you can feel so alone. And then you can find your own friends for the fray. We can do that here. Now, nobody can do any of this journey for anybody else. Church can't do it for you. It's a heroic journey, but it has to be your journey. It's a well-worn path. It's ancient and it's deep. But as we've seen, there's a whole lot of people who never say yes. But you can, and we can. And we are doing everything we know how to do to make this place a place where we can help one another say yes. And so, Indwelling Divine, the courage, the inner resolve to cross the threshold. Deep companions as we face our trials, not crushed by them, but having our limits stripped away. May that be so. Amen. Well, if you would, please prepare your offerings, and let us remember as we do that, first of all, we all donate online now. You go to our website, there's a donate button at the top, and there's lots of different ways you can give. And let's also remember that every bit of energy and time and love and dollars that we invest in spiritual community returns richly on our investment. What we get out of being part of the community is so deeply enriching, it's worth the price of admission. And that being said, in a minute we're going to dismiss the folks on the live stream, and the first question, so you could be thinking about it now, if you had 1 point for a recap and you only got 1 point, what would your top point be? If you'd like to have the discussion at your house, the 3 questions are all there in the live stream notes. So if you would, please put your hand on your heart and let us remember as we go that we are all carriers of the indwelling divine. Love and joy and peace and kindness and goodness and courage and virtue and what it takes to make it in this world. It's in us because the divine is within us. And if you would extend your other hand to our city And let's look for opportunities to share what's already in us with the people that we live and work and go to school with, looking for opportunities to repair and to heal our worlds. Amen. Well, God bless you all. We're dismissed. See you next week. And those of you